Yeah. Can you talk about what's going on in Turkey right now? I mean, the pictures of tanks rolling through the streets and also of people being let out of buildings with their hands behind their backs, some of them in blindfold. I mean, I just want to follow up on our questions to Secretary Kerry yesterday. 50,000 people rounded up, not just military and government officials, but university professors.
Sure.
I mean, is there a concern that even as you support their desire for an investigation, that this is heavy-handed and excessive?
Well, I think the Secretary spoke to that yesterday and made clear that that we believe certainly the attempted overthrow of a democratically elected government by military force is wrong, and we condemned it, and we stand by that condemnation of this attempted coup. And he also talked about, and I think very frankly with you yesterday, talked about our concerns about due process and about moving forward in observation of not just the rule of law, but also Turkey's own democratic institutions as enshrined in their own constitution. And so he's already spoken to this, and I'd point you back to what he said yesterday because it's still valid today. Obviously, at least we're watching events as they unfold there, and our ambassador is engaged nearly constantly with his interlocutors there in Turkey. As you know, the Secretary spoke to the Foreign Minister 4 times in the last several days. So we're in touch with Turkish authorities, and we're certainly watching events closely.
Well, what the Secretary offered was kind of a cautionary note about the need to see the democratic process play out and that the Turks are mindful of all of that. What I'm asking is what you're seeing, the reports that you're getting internally and what you're seeing on TV, is that consistent with those? It seems very heavy-handed and excessive, and I want to know if you're concerned by what you see.
We've been concerned about the situation since the attempted coup, and that's why we're in touch with our Turkish counterparts.
Think it's excessive?
I again, as the Secretary said yesterday, I mean, we need to stay in touch with Turkish authorities and talk to them as they work their way through this. But if you're asking me to, put a bumper sticker on it today and characterize it one way or the other, I don't.
The White House said that Josh Earnest said that he thought that he realized why Turks must feel unease about what they're seeing. Do you feel unease about what you're seeing?
I would share Josh's points that obviously there's a lot of activity right now going on, and it's difficult for us to know with precision exactly every decision they're making and why they're making it. That's why
50,000 people?
That's why we're going to stay in touch with them and monitor this as closely as we can going forward. Look, Turkey's not just a friend, they're a NATO ally. And we take the partnership with Turkey bilaterally and multilaterally. And I would remind you the Turks are represented here today in this counter-ISIL coalition meeting. We take this relationship very seriously. And as I've said many times from the podium, even as friends, we're not afraid to have candid, forthright conversations with one another. Those kinds of conversations are happening, and they'll continue to happen. But I just don't think that we're in a position right now, given these still early days, to broadly characterize everything that's going on and every decision that's being made. Wait a second. Nor am I going to get into a daily habit of litigating every decision that they make as they make it. They had a threat to their government, to their democratically elected government, and I think we can all understand that kind of threat needed to be taken seriously. And we shared the deep concern over this attempted coup.
I understand that, but you're also, urging them to, calibrate their response. And it certainly doesn't look like they're heeding your warnings. And by not saying anything about any kind of disproportionate, the president pretty much said that he saw this as an opportunity to kind of craft down on dissent. And I'm wondering if you think that, being muted in your response is any kind of yellow or green light for them to continue and expand this crackdown.
Well, I disagree that we're being muted in our response. I just don't simply share that.
You're not concerned about what you see in the streets when 50,000 people are being, the Europeans yesterday were very vocal at that press conference. Both the German and the Dutch foreign minister said, what we're seeing is really concerning to us.
And the Secretary, and we have said all along,
The
that
Secretary did not say that.
we're concerned. Obviously, we're concerned about what's going on in Turkey, and we're staying in close touch with Turkish authorities as they work through this. So, I mean, I think again, the Secretary's made clear our concerns on both sides of the ledger, on the attempted overthrow of a democratic government by military force, and about our legitimate, very friendly concerns over democratic institutions in Turkey, and seeing that they move forward in a responsible way, guided by the rule of law and due process and their own constitution.
John, can I ask you, since you mentioned their own constitution, it's changing by the minute. Do you agree with the notion that the president should have extended powers for extended detention of specific suspects?
I'm not in a position to have full visibility on legislative. Hang on a second, Brad.
Well,
legislative decisions that they are in the process of making.
I don't want to hear what you don't want to do. I want to hear what you can say. And since you didn't want to speak about the broad brushstroke, I'm asking you specific questions.
We are look, as I said before, Brad. Turkey's democracy matters to us. We want to see, as I've said before, that they live up to the democratic principles that are enshrined in their own constitution as they work through this very tense, very anxiety-filled time, and we understand that. But I'm not in a position.
Do you support the right of the president to be able to pass laws without parliamentary approval?
We support that
seemed to be enshrined in the Constitution until recently.
As we've said before, we support the democratic principles that are enshrined in the Turkish Constitution. Now, as they work through this,
Constitutions change, though.
Well, Brad, look,
changing.
I'm not an expert on the constitutional changes that are occurring there.
Well,
I've seen press reports of decisions that they are preparing to make. As far as I know, no laws have yet actually changed. And so I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to hypothesize. I'm not going to cast judgment on decisions that, that at least legislative decisions that haven't been made yet. We are in close touch with them. We're going to stay in close touch with them. Turkey matters to us as a friend and an ally. So does their democracy, and the will of the Turkish people obviously is important to us as well. So I'm just not going to again get ahead of things right now.
Have you looked at the provisions of the state of emergency, of the extra powers that it gives the government? I mean, there's a very long list, and I would say like a good 3/4 of them are against things that you say from this podium that you're against from other countries every day.
As I do in many other places around the world.
Ban the print and distribution of journals, magazines, newspapers. Can rule by decree. Order NGOs to cease operations for a specific period of time. Ban and restrict people from going or gathering in certain areas, both public and private. Search anyone or anything without authorization from a judge. These are things that from this podium, when another country would do it, you would say this is, a violation of human rights, not against democratic principles. Are these consistent with the democratic principles that you're preaching from this podium all the time? I'm
not preaching from the podium. I'm trying to articulate U.S. foreign policy and our
this
views.
This seems pretty much not in accordance with U.S. foreign
Again,
policy.
if you just let me finish, then I'm happy to answer the question. We're watching this very closely, Elise, and as I also am mindful of doing from the podium, I don't comment about pending legislation here in the United States, and we don't make it a habit.
The state of emergency is actually instituted right now.
I understand that they've issued a state of emergency, and again, given that the government was under a threat of overthrow by military force, it is not beyond the pale that they would have to make some decisions about law and order there in their country. We are in touch with them. We're going to stay in touch with them, and I'm not going to characterize each and every decision that they're making as they're making it. We need to learn more, frankly, about this pending legislation and about their intent going forward, and about how they're going to implement the state of emergency, for how long, with what measures, before we're going to be in a position to comment one way or the other.
The government said that the state, the government said that the state of emergency is being implemented to order the counter effect of the Gulenists, followers of, the Muslim cleric, who the government blames for the coup. So basically, in this state of emergency, they're giving themselves the powers to round anybody up that has anything to do with Gulen.
Obviously, we don't want to see excessive measures be applied, clearly.
And you don't see them being applied?
What I'm saying is, We're watching this closely, and we're going to stay in touch with them, and we're going to register if we have concerns. We're going to do that through diplomatic channels, and as we typically do with other countries around the world. But we're watching this very closely, and I'm not trying to be evasive here. Turkey.
Well, you seem like you are. I'm not saying you're trying to be, but you are being.
Fair enough. Well, again, Turkey matters to us as a friend and an ally. Their democracy matters to us, and we've said that many times. It matters so much to us that we are going to stay in close touch with them going forward. But again, we have to be also mindful, that they have gone through a significant emergency and a threat to their own democracy.
That's one point of clarification. In a lot of your statements and also in remarks, you've referred to the democratically elected government, but there's been very little said about whether you believe Turkey has a democratic government, not elected, just that it is a democratic government. Do you see right now the Turkish government as a democratic government?
We still continue to see Turkey as a democracy. Yes.
As a functioning democracy?
As a democracy.
A simple added on thing on this then. It is today, given that the coup was defeated, the greater threat to Turkish democracy comes from the threat of another insurrection or government overreach. Which is the greater of the two?
I'm not in a position to be able to characterize that, Dave. I mean, I think any democratic government that faced what they faced just a few days ago, and let's be mindful of the calendar here. This wasn't that long ago. You can understand that they have a responsibility to investigate. They have a responsibility to hold those who are responsible for it to account. It's also reasonable to expect that they don't have perfect information. Again, I'm not justifying every decision that they're making, and I'm not or defending it. But what I'm saying is that I think it should be reasonable to anybody to understand that they would have to investigate and to look as widely as they feel they need to try to get at better information, more specific information about who was responsible and how they were able to get that far in their planning. So again, we've made clear our condemnation of the attempt. We've also made clear, and the Secretary was clear about this, about our concern about the rule of law going forward and due process. Those concerns on both sides of the ledger remain valid today as they did yesterday, and they will remain valid again going forward tomorrow.
He was concerned that the rule of law be respected. He didn't say that he was concerned that the rule of law is not being respected. Which is it?
He said...
No, he didn't.
At least he also said in his answer to you that we're watching this closely, that we're in touch with Turkish authorities, and that we're going to work through diplomatic channels to make sure that we better understand what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Well, if you don't have concerns about what they're doing, then why would you need better?
I didn't say we didn't have concerns. I've said numerous times in my exchange with you today that we're obviously concerned about what's going on. They do have a responsibility to hold those responsible to account.
Well, don't they have a responsibility to do an investigation before they know who's responsible, before detaining 50,000 people?
And I believe that they are investigating. And again, the how and the process, obviously, we're watching very closely.